1863, this quiet piece of farmland became one of the bloodiest places on the Gettysburg battlefield. To the farmer who worked this land, it was meant for harvest, a field of grain, not gunfire. But when the Union and Confederate armies met here, everything changed. For hours that afternoon, soldiers charged back and forth through the wheat field. The fighting was close, desperate, and brutal. The ground changed hands 6 times before the shooting finally stopped. By the end of the day, the field was torn apart. The wheat was gone, trampled into the dirt. Hundreds of men lie where they fell, and the land that once grew life now held the dead. The wheat field became a symbol of just how fierce and costly the Battle of Gettysburg really was. Today, it's peaceful again, but the story of what happened here still echoes through history. This is the story of Gettysburg's wheat field. By the morning of July 2nd, 1863, the armies of the North and South faced each other across rolling farmlands south of Gettysburg. Union Commander Major General George Meade had built a strong defense position. His left flank rested near 2 rocky hills, Little and Big Round Top, and ran north along the Cemetery Ridge. But one of his subordinates, Major General Daniel Sickles, wasn't satisfied. Sickles' 3rd Corps was ordered to hold ground on the lower slopes of Cemetery Ridge. To him, the land ahead, slightly higher around the peach orchard, looked better. Without orders, he moved his entire corps forward nearly 3/4 of a mile. This decision stretched his men thin and created a bulging line vulnerable on both sides. Behind the peach orchard sat George Rose's wheat field, about 20 acres of ripe grain bordered by stone walls and fences. When Sickles' corps took up new positions, the wheat field became the weak middle of a line that could be attacked from 3 sides. Around 4 o'clock that afternoon, the Confederates' attack began. On the southern end of the battlefield, General James Longstreet unleashed his divisions under John Bell Hood and Lafayette McLaws. Hood's Texans and Alabamians moved first towards Devil's Den and the Round Tops. To their left, McLaws' division, including Brigadier General Joseph Kershaw's South Carolinian Brigade and Brigadier General Paul Semmes's Georgia Brigade, aimed directly for the wheat field. Kershaw's men advanced in 2 lines through the orchard and pastures, driving skirmishers before them. The heat was stiffening, the smoke thick from artillery posted on both sides. One South Carolinian later wrote, "We could not see 10 paces from the dust and powder. The wheat was as high as a man's waist, and through it we pushed, firing at shadows." Waiting for them were Colonel Regis de Trobriand's Union regiments, the 17th Maine, 3rd Michigan, 5th Michigan, and 40th New York. These men had thrown up a rough defense along a stone wall at the edge of the field. The first Confederate push struck the 17th Maine head-on. Colonel Charles Merrill's men held firm, loading and firing as fast as they could. The regiment alone would fire nearly 20,000 rounds before the day was done. Merrill shouted over the roar of musketry, "Hold fast, boys. The line depends on you." Behind them, Hobart Ward's brigade anchored the right. His regiments, including the 99th Pennsylvania and 20th Indiana, faced waves of Georgians from Brigadier General George T. Anderson's brigade. Fighting among the farm and fences and timber near the peach orchard, realizing that Sickles' advanced line was collapsing, ordered reinforcements from the 2nd Corps. Brigadier General John Caldwell's division, roughly 3,200 men, marched at the double quick through the Trussell Farm towards the wheat field. Caldwell's deployed his division in classic battle formation. Cross's brigade on the left, Zook's next, then Kelly's Irish Brigade and Brooks' brigade on the far right. As they came over the rise, they saw the wheat field ahead, a haze of smoke, the golden stalks flattened in patches where men had fallen. On Caldwell's left, Colonel Edward Cross of the 5th New Hampshire led his men forward. A hard veteran of Cross wore a black bandana. That day, instead of his usual red one. "This is my last battle," he told a fellow officer. Moments later, a bullet struck him down. To Cross's right came Colonel Patrick Kelly's Irish Brigade, the 63rd, 69th, and 88th New York, the 116th Pennsylvania, and 28th Massachusetts, advancing under green flags with golden harps. They moved steadily through the wheat, trading volleys with Kershaw's South Carolinians. One Irish soldier later recalled, "The wheat was cut down by bullets as the reapers blade. We could hardly see the enemy, only the flash of their guns." The Union counterattack surged forward. Cross's and Kelly's men pushed Kershaw's and Semmes's brigades back out of the field. On the right, Colonel John Brooks' brigade, the 27th and 64th New York, 53rd and 145th Pennsylvania, and 2nd Delaware, swept through the Rosewoods in an advance. They cleared the western edge of the wheat field entirely. For a brief time, Caldwell's line stood triumph. The wheat field belonged to the Union, but they were far from secure. Caldwell's men fought to reorganize. Longstreet sent in fresh troops. Brigadier General William Wolford's Georgia Brigade and the shattered remnants of Barksdale's Mississippians, having smashed the Union line at the Peach Orchard, now wheeled eastward. Their line struck the Union right flank, just as Caldwell's troops tried to hold the ground they won. The impact was devastating. Colonel Edward Zook, commanding the 2nd Brigade, fell mortally wounded. The Irish Brigade's flanks crumbled over the fire. Brooks' men were caught in crossfire and began to fall back through the Rosewoods, firing as they withdrew. The scene would turn to chaos. Captain Samuel Harris of the 5th New Hampshire wrote, "It was impossible to tell you where the line began or ended. We fired at the flashes in the smoke, not knowing if friend or foe stood before us." Soldiers stumbled over bodies, tripped on broken muskets, and shouted for regimental colors to rally around. By 6:30 p.m., Caldwell's entire division had been forced back towards Cemetery Ridge. The Trobians and Ward's exhausted survivors fell in beside them. The Confederates held the wheat field, but only barely. Their ranks were shattered, their ammunition nearly gone, and their lines too disordered to continue the attack. When dawn came on July 3rd, Colonel Jacob Schweitzer rode through what had been his brigade's position, and later said it looked like a field mown clean. He recognized men he'd spoken with that morning, now lying where the line stood. Across the field, Major Henry Tremaine of Sickles' staff moved through the haze and wrote that the sight sickened him more than any battle he'd ever seen. He came upon a familiar uniform, regiments he'd seen form up full that afternoon, now scattered in every direction. He said there wasn't even a company in the 3rd Corps that hadn't lost someone he knew. In the Rosewoods, Brigadier General John Caldwell searched for his brigade commanders. He found none of them untouched. Cross and Zook were gone. Brooke was wounded. Kelly's Irish Brigade had been reduced to a fraction of its strength. Caldwell later admitted he could hardly bring himself to write the report. When it was over, there wasn't much left. The wheat field didn't change the battle or even the war. It wasn't even a strategic point on the Gettysburg battlefield. It just showed what it took to fight. What's left now is quiet ground and a memory most men tried to forget.